What's more dangerous, a smooth-talking immigrant who tricks thousands into giving him millions, or a cold-blooded financier who lends to entire nations while cooking the books? This isn't fiction. This is history, and one of them may have shaped the way we regulate money to this day. Before we move on to the next part, please give me a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for listening. What do a broke Italian immigrant and a Swedish business tycoon have in common? They both built financial empires, one out of promises, the other out of paper. Charles Ponzi and Ivar Kreuger didn't need weapons or masks. All they needed was trust, and once they had it, they weaponized it. In 1920, Boston was buzzing with a strange promise. A man named Charles Ponzi claimed he could double your money in 90 days. People rushed to give him their savings. He wasn't selling stocks or bonds. He was selling an idea, international postal coupons. He said he could exploit currency differences between countries using these coupons, buy them cheap abroad, redeem them for more in the US, and pocket the profit. It sounded smart, too smart, and it was. Ponzi never made his money from coupon trading. Instead, he paid old investors using new investors' money. It was a shell game, and the shell was always empty. Across the Atlantic, in the calm precision of Stockholm's boardrooms, Ivar Kreuger was writing a different kind of story. Nicknamed the Match King, he built a global monopoly on safety matches. By the late 1920s, Kreuger controlled match production in over 30 countries. But matches were just the surface. Behind the scenes, he ran a shadow empire of off-the-books loans, complex shell companies, and falsified accounting. Kreuger offered huge loans to governments, often struggling European states, in exchange for monopoly rights in their markets. He promised investors high, stable returns. What they didn't know was that much of it was smoke and mirrors. When his empire collapsed in 1932, it left a $1.3 billion crater in global finance, over $25 billion in today's money. 2 men, 2 scams, both built on belief. Ponzi's story unfolded fast and loud, a spectacular crash within months. Kreuger's took years, silently weaving itself into the fabric of global finance. One was impulsive, the other meticulous, but they shared one truth. Their success relied on lies dressed as logic. Stay with us. In Part 2, we'll dig deeper into how exactly these men fooled the world, what made them tick, how their minds worked, and what their crimes reveal about the psychology of fraud. Charles Ponzi didn't invent the scam that now bears his name, but he perfected it, and did so with a grin. He was bold, fast-talking, and fed off attention. When questioned about the legitimacy of his business, he didn't flinch. He took reporters on tours of his office, showed stacks of papers, promised audits. Every move was designed to buy time. That was all he ever needed, just enough time to rope in more investors before the truth caught up. Psychologists looking back have described Ponzi as a textbook opportunist, narcissistic, manipulative, deeply impulsive. But above all, he was incredibly aware of what people wanted to hear. He sold hope in a time of fear, riches in a time of scarcity. And for a while, it worked. He started with just a few $1,000s in January 1920. By July, he was raking in $250,000 a day. That's the equivalent of over $3 million daily today. The irony? At his peak, he claimed to be managing over $7 million in assets, yet the actual postal coupons in his possession, his supposed core business, were worth less than $30. Ponzi wasn't just a fraud, he was a fantasy wrapped in a suit and a smile. Ivar Kreuger, by contrast, played a longer game. He wasn't loud, he wasn't flamboyant, he was cold, composed, and terrifyingly methodical. While Ponzi dazzled individuals on the street, Kreuger seduced nations. He offered financial lifelines to cash-starved governments after World War I, attractive loans in exchange for long-term economic control. Kreuger and Toll, his holding company, became a spiderweb of subsidiaries, offshore accounts, and hidden debts. He created fake profits to inflate stock prices, issued fraudulent bonds, and manipulated entire markets to support the illusion of stability. Unlike Ponzi, Kreuger wasn't just running from the truth. He was restructuring it, making it harder to find. What drove them? Ponzi's motives were personal. He wanted wealth fast, to escape poverty, to rise above his past failures. There was no great strategy, just hustle and luck, and then a frantic effort to keep the lie alive. Kreuger, on the other hand, was obsessed with control. He wasn't trying to get rich quickly. He was trying to shape economies, to build a kind of financial empire where he was the hidden emperor. His fraud wasn't just about greed, it was about domination, about creating a system where he pulled every string and no one dared question the show. And yet, both men relied on the same fundamental flaw in human nature: trust. They understood that people, whether desperate or greedy, want to believe. They want certainty in uncertain times. Ponzi and Kreuger didn't have to force anyone. They just opened the door and let human hope do the rest. The collapse of Charles Ponzi's empire came swiftly. By August 1920, just 8 months after his scheme began, federal investigators uncovered the truth. The newspapers turned, investors panicked, lines formed outside his office, not of eager depositors, but of desperate victims. The house of cards fell in a single gust. Ponzi was arrested, charged with multiple counts of mail fraud, and sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. But his damage extended beyond financial loss. He shattered public confidence in investing at a time when America was still recovering from war and economic instability. Banks tightened lending. Risk-taking slowed. For many, Ponzi became the face of betrayal. But Ponzi, in the grand scale of financial history, was a flare, bright, brief, and quickly extinguished. Ivar Kreuger, on the other hand, was an earthquake. His collapse in 1932 triggered financial aftershocks across continents. Unlike Ponzi's scam, which targeted individuals, Kreuger's web of deception reached deep into national economies. He had lent hundreds of millions to countries like France, Germany, and Poland. When his empire fell apart, stock markets tumbled, banks holding his debt crumbled, and political leaders were left scrambling to explain why they had trusted a man whose empire was built on forged bonds and fictional profits. The numbers speak for themselves. Ponzi defrauded investors of roughly $20 million, around $300 million today. Kreuger's downfall, by conservative estimates, wiped out over $1.3 billion in capital, adjusted to more than $25 billion in today's terms. But numbers only tell part of the story. Kreuger's fraud struck at the foundation of global finance. It exposed a gaping weakness: that financial systems lacked transparency, regulation, and the tools to detect high-level deception. In many ways, it took Kreuger to teach the world that fraud could be institutional, international, and nearly invisible. Regulators responded. In the United States, Kreuger's collapse was a catalyst for the formation of the Securities and Exchange Commission in 1934. Accounting standards were overhauled. Auditing became mandatory for public companies. Investors, once dazzled by reputation and returns, became more cautious, more skeptical. Kreuger had taught a hard lesson: that trust without verification is a liability. Still, it's worth asking, who was more dangerous? Ponzi, who scammed thousands face-to-face, or Kreuger, who fooled entire nations from behind mahogany desks? Ponzi was a manipulator of individuals. His weapon was charisma. Kreuger was a manipulator of systems. His weapon was complexity. Ponzi's fraud could be explained in a sentence. Kreuger's required a map, a team of analysts, and months of forensic accounting. In the end, both men were undone by the same truth. Lies don't scale forever. Ponzi died in poverty, almost forgotten, in Brazil. Kreuger died with a gun in his hand and a room full of forged documents. And though their stories ended nearly a century ago, echoes of their schemes still whisper through modern markets. From Bernie Madoff to Wirecard, from Enron to FTX, the playbook changes little, only the names and the tools. So the next time someone offers you an investment too good to be true, remember, you're not just protecting your money, you're protecting yourself from a very old story, one where trust is a currency, and the price of belief can be everything. Two men, two lies. One shook a city, the other shook the world. Charles Ponzi gave his name to a scam that still haunts investors. Ivar Kreuger built an empire on illusions that nearly collapsed global finance. And if we're honest, their shadows are still here, just dressed in sharper suits, armed with better spreadsheets. If you found this story as shocking as we did, hit the like button, subscribe for more true financial crime deep dives, and share your thoughts in the comments. Who do you think was more dangerous, the reckless con man or the calculating empire builder? Or is there someone even worse we've forgotten? Let us know. This story's not over. It just changed names.